So with the Ottawa Senators' acquisition of Vladimir Tarasenko the other day, I wanted to go over one of the other names that they also added throughout this offseason. It's Dominik Kubalik, former Chicago Blackhawk, former Detroit Red Wing, and current Ottawa Senator. He was sent over to the Sens in the Alex DeBrincat trade. It was a pretty big deal. I think you probably heard about it. It was a few weeks ago. And for the most part, we've been conversing a lot about the guy going over to Detroit. Hey, DeBrincat is this hometown guy. He's this really talented player, and he's going to play with Larkin. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. It's going to be great. And I said this back in the video that we made when DeBrincat got traded to Detroit initially, that Dominik Kubalik, who was a part of the trade return, is absolutely no slouch of his own. Sure, he kind of played a little bit worse as last season went on. He started off really hot, he kind of trailed towards the end, but at the end of the day, this 27-year-old, 6'2", 190-pound left-handed forward is a pretty good get. His total stat line on 22-23 was 45 points in 81 games played, 20 goals, 25 assists, and as a guy who had formerly produced 30 goals in 68 games as a rookie with the Chicago Blackhawks in 2019-20, there certainly is a lot of talent that is still there. We also talked a little bit about his World Championship stint. He was over a point per game for Team Czechia, 12 points, 8 games played at the tournament there. Very good showcase for Kubalik. But he's heading over to Ottawa next season, and with a contract that sees him making $2.5 million for the next year. He expires in 2024, so this is 1 year long. The Sens will have to re-sign Kubalik and Tarasenko next season, assuming everything goes right and they want to keep them both. But in today's video, I wanted to focus more so on the idea that Dominik Kubalik himself apparently knew that the writing was on the wall in Detroit. Let's go over onto an article published a few days ago. This was written out by Pavel Barta on July 23rd, 2023 on isport.blesk.cz. This is a Czech website that went out there and interviewed Kubalik. The article is in Czech, so I had to translate this from their language into English. So I'm going to leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and read it. If you can understand Czech, then hey, it's probably better for you. But if you're like me, you can just right-click and click Translate to English on the Google machine. Take a look at the title of this article. These are Kubalik's comments on the Ottawa Senators as well as the World Cup. It's a disappointment I have never experienced. He also wants a 5-year contract. The article opens up by saying this. This week, when he was training the little cleats of the KVB hockey camp on the ice of Pilsen Ice Arena, he still had red gloves on his hands. Dominik Kubalik, when getting interviewed for isport.cz, was wearing shorts with the Red Wings emblem. But forward Dominik Kubalik has been with the Sens for 2 weeks, where they traded him for Alex DeBrincat. Not that I was ready for the trade, but I knew it could happen. Now I'm just looking ahead, he says. Now that's kind of endearing, honestly, hearing that Kubalik is still training and doing stuff in Red Wings gear, but as he says to this news outlet, he was not necessarily too surprised to see him getting traded. Not that he was ready, but he knew it could happen. 4 seasons in the NHL, this is his 3rd club. He is changing addresses for the first time as part of the trade. Kubalik found out about the trade during the night, and he looked at his phone. However, the threads could go further. At the World Cup, Ottawa coach DJ Smith worked as an assistant for the Canadian team. It could have had some impact, admits the championship's top scorer, who blamed himself after the quarterfinal loss to the Americans for not converting on the few opportunities in a goalless situation. So, Kubalik himself is saying, or he's hinting towards the idea, that because he was part of that World Championship tournament that we talked about, where he was absolutely dominant, maybe DJ Smith, who was part of the Canadian coaching staff, took note and was like, hey, we gotta get this guy. That's at least what Kubalik is hypothesizing in this interview. The rest of the article, by the way, is behind a paywall, but there are some comments that are publicized here, wherein Kubalik talks about him not converting on chances at the World Championships and how the team might have lost a game because of it. I mean, the guy was over a point per game at the tournament in general, so I think he's kind of okay. He was the 2nd most productive point scorer at the tournament too, by the way. Now, in order to further go through this idea, I also wanted to go over to this piece published on Detroit Hockey Now. This was written by Bob Duff a day after the Czech article was published. It talks about how Kubalik is not surprised that the Red Wings traded him. Because in this article, there was a tweet that was included that I thought was pretty interesting. This was tweeted out by Proficiency, replying to the Spittin' Chicklets podcast. Take a look at what this Red Wings fan goes out there and says. I love Dominik Kubalik and I wish him well, but he started out on fire and then continually moved down the lineup for not performing. And in this screenshot, you could see that in the month of October, Kubalik had 4 goals and 7 assists for 11 points in 9 games. In November, he was under a point per game. Starting in December, all the way to the end of the season, though, Kubalik started to produce at a much slower pace. 6 points in 13 games, 6 points in 13 games again, 4 points in 11 games, 5 points in 15 games. Throughout the season in 22-23, Dominik Kubalik went from over a point per game to around a point per game to getting maybe a point every 3 or even 4 games. It was really bad seeing the decline in point production, but of course, seeing him move down the lineup definitely didn't help, and played into a lot of this too. And so for Kubalik, you could understand that there still is a good amount of talent here. It's just going to depend on DJ Smith and the rest of the Ottawa Senators to really find the right place to bring it out. Because with other players on your team like Tarasenko, for example, getting added too, this team has really gone out there and boosted the caliber of talent throughout the lineup. Not to say that Alex DeBrincat was not a talented player for this team, he definitely was. It's just, with this trade for Kubalik, you replace the winger on your team, and then you add Tarasenko in free agency as well. You still have at your disposal, Jimmy Stu is still here, Brady Tkachuk. Of course, you need to sign Shane Pinto still. And so when it comes to the way this roster is assembled, there's a lot of depth throughout the lineup here. And you could debate that if you really played your cards poorly, you could end up screwing over one of these middle to top 6 caliber guys with less playing time than they deserve. So it's really going to be a good balancing act here if you want to see where the Wings are going to go, or not the Wings, excuse me, where the Senators are going to go with the deployment of forwards. Because if you gave Kubalik the chance, you said, okay, here's, dare I say, first line power play time. It's probably not going to be first line, it's probably going to be second line, but bear with me. If you gave Kubalik first line power play minutes, who's to say he can't go out there and get at least 20 to 25 goals like he had in his rookie season? He had 30 goals as a member of the Blackhawks when he signed with that team as a free agent. Of course, maybe I'm kind of biased because seeing that guy play in 2019-20, I was a really big fan of his back when he made his debut, and that was the Calder race, which included other names like Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar, so I was particularly paying very close attention to everything that was going down with the rookies, and seeing what Kubalik was able to do back then, obviously it was great. Hopefully he can replicate that kind of success in Ottawa. Hopefully he does not have the same sort of drop-off after the first few months like he had with Detroit, because at the end of the day, 45 points in 81 games is still pretty alright. It's just when you acknowledge that he declined so heavily throughout the year, it gets you thinking, okay, what would be the status of this guy if you just gave him consistent playing time and he allowed himself to be consistent as a result? Where is the ceiling here? Even in his first season, he had 30 goals and 46 points, but that was only in 68 games because the league shut down due to the virus. In the playoffs that year, in the bubble, he had 8 points in 9 games. Really good showcase there out of the then, what was he, 24-year-old? Yeah, that's what he was. So if you're an Ottawa Senators fan, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Kubalik and what do you think he's going to be able to accomplish next season? If you're a Wings fan, what are your thoughts on him expressing that he wasn't surprised that he had gotten traded? And how does this make you feel about his season as a whole, learning about where he's coming from? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.